Hello everyone, and in this video we're going to take a look at the ProBuilder tools in Unity. And what the ProBuilder tools are, basically a package that you can import into Unity. It's owned by Unity, where you can edit and create geometry right inside of your scenes. And this is a really great option for rapid prototyping, level designs, building things like stairs, ramps, walls, without having to go into something like 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, whatever 3D modeling software you're used to creating assets. You can quickly create them to scale for your game scene here, and you can also export them into that other software package as well, using ProBuilder from Unity into one of those other 3D modeling packages. This isn't like a one-shot solution for this type of level design, but it makes it a lot easier to create and rapidly prototype if you use this tool pretty effectively. But I will warn you that it can increase the scope of your project, because it is pretty easy to gray box level design your level using these tools, and the scope can get pretty wild and out of control if you go a little too much into using these tools. So I will have a little bit of a caveat there when using ProBuilder. But it is far more effective than using something like primitive objects. Like if you go up to your hierarchy and create 3D objects, like if you use these objects to kind of gray box out your level, this is going to be a lot more effective. So I'm going to show you this tool here and how to implement it. So to first get started, we need to go to this area that's kind of a newer area to Unity, and it's called the Package Manager. And the Package Manager basically has parts of the engine that aren't 100% necessary to create a game stored in it, and it downloads it and installs those packages into the game engine, because there's all sorts of stuff in here that if they were to just roll it into the engine, it would make Unity a really huge download, really huge file size. It would also make your game larger. So like if you're making like a 2D game, you don't necessarily need some of the 3D tools like ProBuilder in here. Now, there's a filter that says in projects that shows all the packages that are inside of your project at the moment. If I scroll, click on the drop down and scroll down here, you'll see that all packages is an option. So I'll select all packages, and you can see that there's all types of packages for like 2D art, augmented reality, Cinemachine, different features that are inside of Unity, in-app purchasing. So like if you need to add something like that to your game, Magic Leap you see is a package for that, which is another type of hardware you can develop for. But like if I'm making a game for PC, I don't need these plugins to be installed. You'll even see other things like the high definition render pipeline, XR legacy tools, which are like for VR and so forth. But what we're going to look for here is ProBuilder, which is already selected. Lucky for me, but if you can't find it, there is a search where you could just type in Pro, and it'll narrow down what's there. You can see there's even like post-processing effects and so forth, which we'll be looking at later in other videos. But for the meantime, what we're going to do is install this package for ProBuilder. Now, there's a couple other things that you should know about this package manager. The first thing is, like, we're using a fairly new version of Unity as of when this video is recorded, so I could download the newest version of ProBuilder and it'll work, guaranteed with this version of Unity. But say I'm running an older version of Unity, and ProBuilder was supported in that previous version, but maybe this new version of ProBuilder doesn't support it. You can actually go to the drop down here and then check out all of the different versions and roll it back to whatever flavor or whatever different version is compatible with what Unity you're using. Okay. So in this particular situation, we're just going to go with the top one, which is 4.2.3. And all we have to do from here now is click install, and it's as easy as that to install these packages. So this should get started installing this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the video and let it kind of do its thing. Okay, so now the ProBuilder package has been installed, the tools are there. You can close this window now. We don't need that open anymore. Now you may or may not in your scene view have these tools available. Probably not if it's your first time. This is not my first time running ProBuilder on this version of Unity, obviously. So, these may or may not show up right away for you. But when you have these up, that means that ProBuilder has been successfully installed and is working properly. So to get this started, I'm going to create a new scene. So I'm going to go to my scenes folder, create a new scene, and I'll call this one ProBuilder. And that'll just be our example scene for ProBuilder. I'll jump into here. Now, to get ProBuilder up and running and start to see these tools, what you need to do is go over to your hierarchy and then scroll down to 3D objects, and you should see ProBuilder Cube as an option. Okay, so we'll start off with ProBuilder Cube. And what that's going to do is create a cube with all of the components it needs to be a ProBuilder mesh. And this will help to start or initialize the tools. So if we look over here, there's a component that says ProBuilder Mesh Script. You could use this component to start a ProBuilder. So we'll click on the Open ProBuilder button. And what that'll do is it'll bring us our menu. You can also get that menu out of the windows, but I find this to be like a pretty good workflow for getting this out. And this ProBuilder menu is basically all of the tools that you need to start creating geometry and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to dock this over where my game view is. And that way I have all the tools here to be able to work with. Now we already have a mesh out here, so I'm going to show you how to kind of edit these meshes using this cube that we created. So just like any other 3D modeling program, you have the different sub-object components. So here at the top of the scene view, you'll see these 4 buttons. The first button is object, second button is vertices, third is edges, and then fourth is faces. So if I want to start editing this thing, if I want to move it around, I can move it around in object mode. As a matter of fact, why don't we center this in our scene? So I'll zero this out using the transform tool. And then I'll hit the F key to focus in on it. And what we can do is we can start editing this thing. So if I look at the different sub-object modes, I can select vertices and move those around, which I'm not going to want to do that just yet. I could select edges, move the edges around. Or I could select faces and move or extrude the faces, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually extrude these faces and kind of make a large platform for our player controller to run around down. So I'll open this up. I'll grab this face here, pull this face out there. And all it's doing is extruding, taking those faces, not even extruding it, it's just moving the face in space and making the entire cube larger. And if I want to make this smaller, I could drag this down like this. Now I got a nice platform to start building or rapid prototyping our level on. Pretty cool, right? Alright, so we're going to need a couple of things to be able to work with this scene. So if I go to my prefabs folder, I should have the player character controller object here, and I'll just drag that into the scene. And that'll give us a good sense of how big this platform needs to be. So I might need to make this a little bit bigger. And go back to object mode and use my move tool. I had to go back to object mode to be able to move my object around. And I'll move it so that he's above the platform. And I'm also going to just delete the main camera out of the scene. I no longer need it here. So I could make this a little bit larger, and I'll do that. I'll go into face mode and drag these out. Make this a little bit bigger. Maybe the face is too small to select. Alright, make that a little bit wider, and a little bit wider in this direction. Alright, cool. So you're probably saying to yourself, that's great, as long as it's cubes, right? And the cool thing is that in ProBuilder, there are primitive meshes just like what you would find in inside of any other 3D modeling software package. So if I go over here to New Shape in the ProBuilder menu and hit the plus sign, it will open up this shape tool, which I'm going to try not to dock anywhere. I'm just going to try to keep it floating for now. And if I go to the drop down, you'll see that there's a bunch of different primitive objects that you can create. So you could create a primitive object for a cube, a sprite, and it'll change here in the view, a prism. I'll zoom in on it so you can see what it looks like. Prism, a stair, which that is very useful. Cylinder, a door, which makes a door frame. Plane, a pipe, which will be hollowed out in the middle, a cone, and I think you get the idea. Arch. So there's a whole bunch of different primitive shapes that you can then go in and kind of move around and mold them to how that you want them to look for your scene using the sub-object tools. You can also use these parameters to parametrically change these. So if I wanted to increase the number of sizes on this, I could make it smoother, or I could make it narrower, make it into a peak like that just by clicking and dragging those options there. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is the stairs. Not the stairs, I think I want to do the door. So let's jump over to the door. Let's start off with doors. And what we'll do is we'll build a wall, and I'll show you how you can kind of augment this object to make like walls and that sort of thing. And this door gives you a nice wall height to start off with. So right now it's just giving you like a preview mode, and if you want it in the scene you have to click on this build button. So I clicked on the build button and it's there. And now what I'm going to do is move this guy down. Oops, I guess stop it in sub-object mode. Object mode, move this thing down. And just like with the other tools in Unity, you can use vertex snapping with this by holding down the V key, and you can snap your manipulator tool to any of the vertices here while holding down the V key, and snap it to another vertex somewhere else. So if I want this to sit directly on here, I can snap it to there and then kind of move it into place where I want it to be. Alright. My hand tool is working very oddly. Alright. So I think I've got this fairly somewhat in the scene where I want it. And if I want to create a wall out of this, I could go to the edge tool here and select some of the edges. So let's focus in on that. And I'm going to hold down the shift key and select all the edges that I'd like to extrude. And I can just drag this out and create ourselves a wall here. Now I'll go to the other side, select one of the edges, then hold down the shift key, select the edges that I want to extrude. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. And I'll drag it out this way. So this is a really neat tool, as you can see, for starting to rapidly prototype your scenes, your levels, and so forth. And we can then work with our character control with this. So I'm going to close the shape tool for now, go back to object mode, and hit play. Let's walk around here inside of our scene. So I'm inside of my scene view, and I can walk through the door. And this has got collision on it. I can't just walk through the wall. I could probably jump over it if I add the ground layer mask to the ground. So I'll select the ground and then go over to layer and set the layer to ground for this, because it needs to have that for our character controller to interact with it and be able to jump. And look, I could jump right over the wall. So that's a good indication that, hey, I may need to adjust my jump height for this. But anyway, you kind of get the idea as far as that goes. But we could use these tools to be able to test out certain things about our character controller. So we were looking earlier, we had seen the stairs and the shapes here. So I'm going to go down to the tools here for the shape tool to create a new shape. I'm going to go to stair, and I'm just going to move this stair into our scene somewhere, and move it down and around. And you can see here with these stairs, we can increase the number of steps, decrease the number of steps. We could change the width. We could change the height. We could change the depth of this thing. So I'm going to make the stairs, just a basic generic stair here. And I'm going to increase the height just a tad. I'll set it to 3. Not 2.3, 3. There we go. And then I'll hit build. So we've created a stair now in our scene. I could then take this stair object, as long as you're in object mode, and move it down so that's on the terrain or on the ground plane. And I'm going to just rotate this around a negative 90 degrees. Turn my move tool. And move this so that's right over here. And I'm just going to duplicate this by hitting Control D. If you look in your hierarchy, you should see there's another set of stairs there. I'll just take this one out and rotate this one 90. I'll make it basically a stair that we can walk up and then back down. And I can go to my face tool here, select this face, and drag this face outward. And I've got like kind of like a little platform up top here that I can intersect with. Alright, so go back to object mode, and I'm going to go to my top view, orthographic, so that I'm not seeing things in perspective. And just going to line these up across from one another so that they're even. Alright, cool. So I got a nice little staircase that we can interact with. I'll set this back to perspective by clicking on this little ISO button here. And what I'm going to want to do now is also probably set these to be on the ground layer too. So I'll select both of these. I'll put them as ground so I can jump off of them. Alright, so I want to kind of take a look at some of the features of the character controller that we built here. So if I look at player CC, there's a couple of different items here. There's slope limit, which we'll tackle in just a minute, and then there's step offset. So step offset is the height from the ground to the next step in relationship to our player controller that our player controller can step up. So that's like the highest value it can step up. Okay. And you can't make it higher than your player controller or you'll get some error results. Alright, so let's try this and see if he can walk up these stairs. So I'm going to walk around here. Oh, looks like I've got another stair there. And I can walk up the stairs. Cool. And I can jump up and down on them. Alright. So I'll exit play mode here. I'm not sure. Oh, that's because this tool's still open, so I'll just shut this off. Alright, so let's take a look here at our player controller. I've had some issues with this before. I'm going to set this to let's see, maybe not 0.5. Let's set it to 0.1 and try this. You can see I can't walk up the stairs now. Now, your mileage may vary on this, like, so depending on like how big you made your stairs. I'm sure you're making your stairs not exactly the way I'm making mine, but you can see I can't walk up these stairs now. But if I hit escape, right, and activate my mouse here, and set this to 0.2, and then click back into my scene, I can start to, climb up these stairs. I had to jump over the first one because I guess that first one's a little bit more than 0.2. Alright. Whoa. And you can kind of see some of the differences of like how a first person controller works over a rigid body. So we're programming the gravity and he kind of just like floats down. He doesn't immediately fall down. That's something that you'd have to tweak somewhat in the code if you want him to fall faster when he comes off the stairs. You could also put triggers at the beginning and end of these if you want to have like some custom falling and that sort of thing. But anyway, as you can see, you can control walking upstairs. I'm going to create one more object in here as an example of this ProBuilder stuff, and I'll leave it to yourself to explore and kind of do more with it. But if I jump back into ProBuilder, this time I'm going to create a cube, and I'm going to move the demo cube over to this side of the of the level that we created. And I'm just going to build it and close this window. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the face tool, make this taller and a little bit wider in this direction here. We're going to build a ramp. And then go to the, yeah, I'm going to make the top a little bit wider so it gives us some landing space, right that. And then go to edges and just grab the bottom edge here and pull that out. And now we've got a ramp. Okay. And I'll take the player controller. So I'll move this ramp. Whoops. Go to object mode. And then take the player controller and move him so that he's at the base of the ramp. And you want to make sure that the ramp is definitely intersected with the plane here. Alright, so I've got a fairly low angle here. This should be a pretty normal step height. And by default, our character controller should be able to walk up anything that's 45 degrees. So that means that as long as the angle is less than 45 degrees, he'll be able to walk up this. Now, if you were using something like a rigid body control, it gets a little bit more complicated to walk up slopes. Basically, what you have to do is get the normal, right? The normal is the angle that is perpendicular, or a vector that is perpendicular to the angle of this surface, and then you'd have to check that against the angle of your player controller. And if it's within a certain threshold, he can or can't walk up that slope. That's how you would do it if you were to use a rigid body controller. And this character controller component is doing something similar to that here. But as a demonstration, I'm just going to hit play. And if I look over at that ramp, and if you look at the scene view, you can see we walk up the ramp, right? Very good, just like we would expect to, okay? Now, if I lower this value to something like 15, like it has to be lower than 15 degrees, now I should not be able to go up this ramp, but I don't even know what this angle is. It could be 15 degrees. It looks like 15 degrees is it. So let's try 5 degrees for the slope limit. And let's see if this stops us from walking up this slope. I should have probably made something steeper. And it is. So you can see here I can say that if it's anything greater than 5 degrees, I can't walk up it. Just as a little test, I'm going to try a couple other ones. I'm going to try 10. I'm wondering exactly how many degrees this is. And, yep, I still can't do it at 10. So it's probably within the threshold. It's between 10 and 15 degrees. So if I hit escape again, that'll bring my mouse. And I can go into the inspector, type in 15, and then go back into this window here. Need to look around. See the platform, and now I can walk up it again. So that's a really neat thing about using the character controller as a starting point for your games, because it has a lot of those built-in features for character movement, and it puts a lot of that control into your hands. Whereas the rigid body, if you were to use a rigid body for controlling a character, it relies on the physics engine. So you have to basically finesse your character movement with the physics, but there are some advantages to that as well, where you have inherent collision detection, pushback, like you're able to take your character controller and walk up to an object and then just start pushing it. Like if we want to push something with the character controller, we would need to use some custom functions to do that. And we're going to take a look at some examples of that in a later video. But this is it for the stuff on ProBuilder. Use it to fine-tune your character controller, build yourself a nice little obstacle course or something that you can get around in, and put yourself in the different situations that you think that you would need to construct the game that you would want. And this is a nice way to be able to test that. So, see you in the next video.